This is Virginia Mann, top dog at Corey's Canine Corner. And today we're talking about the screwworm with Dr. Sheldon Rubin. Dr. Rubin is a longtime Chicago area veterinarian. You've probably seen him over the years on national television, if no place else, on the Oprah show, because he was Oprah's veterinarian while she was here in Chicago, and on many other media outlets. Dr. Rubin, in addition to his work heading one of Chicago's large or building one of Chicago's largest veterinary practices and building Chicago's largest veterinary emergency and specialty center. He's the past president of the Illinois Veterinary Medical Association, the Chicago Veterinary Medical Association, and for today's related tangentially related purposes, the past president of the American Heartworm Society. So he knows a bit about parasites and pests and knows what we're talking about today, which is the screwworm. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Rubin.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Screwworm is a parasite. So what we have here is a fly that's a little bit bigger than a housefly. And if you look behind my picture here, you can see what the actual screwworm adult fly looks like. They're a little, like I say, they're a little bit bigger than a housefly. They have bright orange eyes, red eyes, we would call them, a kind of a blue-green metallic back, and the yellow mouth parts. Now that doesn't mean you're going to be looking at all of these pieces, but let's talk a little bit about what they do and why this is called screwworm. Um, the screwworm fly uh, was eradicated in the United States, I think in the early 60s. And some very smart scientists figured out how to be able to do that by irradiating with gamma radiation the pupa of the fly. And the pupa is what burrows into the ground and transforms into the adult fly, as you see behind me. And so we eradicated it in the United States, like I said, in the early 60s. This time, it has returned, and the first case was found June 3rd of this year, June 3rd, 2026. Um, and why is that a problem? Because it's a devastating parasite. When the female fly, lands on an animal, and this can be a cow, a goat, sheep, or dog, or cat, or even in some cases a human, it finds a wound. It could be as small as a tick bite wound, or it can affect, for animals, for instance, dogs that have allergies and their skin is somewhat excoriated and raw, or if they've had surgery recently and there's a surgical wound, or any wound at all. These flies, female flies, will lay somewhere between 200 to 300 eggs around that wound. And then within a few days, those eggs hatch into what we call, as we know them, as maggots. So everybody knows what a fly maggot is, but
Right.
as a maggot, and that's about how big they are. They're just a little bit bigger than that, and they have ridges around them. And these maggots have very powerful teeth, and they begin to burrow like a screw into live tissue, not dead tissue, live tissue. And that's what makes these so unique because most of the we call them bots. If people know our farmers, they know what bot flies are. Most of those go into dead tissue, but this particular the screwworm goes into only live tissue, and these larvae will burrow down into the tissue and eat while they're burrowing. They're eating live tissue and can cause tremendous damage. Now, in a dog or cat, while we would expect, unless the dog is completely unattended and maybe tethered in the backyard and is exposed to these flies, the dogs are going to have a pretty severe infestation. Cats who are outside cats will also have a severe infestation because they're exposed to these flies all the time. Let me be very clear here. The latest information as of this morning is we have 44 cases that have been confirmed in the United States, and out of those, only three dogs. And this is along the Texas-Mexican border, and this is also involves one case in New Mexico. Now, that doesn't mean that's all there is, but those are the only
Right.
ones that we found reported and where we found the screw flies. Because we have a very intense, the United States Department of Agriculture and the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services of the United States Department of Agriculture effectively are always searching and researching any of these possible devastating types of parasites or bacterial diseases. Um, Unfortunately, I have to mention that these divisions have been cut dramatically so that the number of scientists and researchers and people that go out into the field to do all the studying have been reduced to almost practically nothing. So the process gets slowed down considerably in trying to find where these fruit flies are and what the issues are with the animals. So first, let me say to you that if let's say a herd of cattle, if there's a one or two of the cattle that are found to have the screwworms, that doesn't mean the whole herd has to be eliminated. For instance, like in avian flu, if a chickens in a laying operation, and there could be 300,000 chickens, if they avian flu infects uh, that laying house, all of the chickens in that laying house have to be euthanized. But in this particular case, the cattle are isolated and they're treated. And usually, if they're free after 21 days and the wounds have healed, they're let back into the herd again. So it's not like the whole herd has to be eliminated. Now, for a dog or cat, obviously, if it's found, if a wound is found on them, it's treated. I mean, it can be treated with your veterinarian can successfully treat that. Doesn't mean it's the end of the life for the animal. But in wildlife, it's a different story because, for instance, if it's a deer and they're infested with, maybe hundreds or maybe even thousands of these larvae, those animals can't be saved because they do tremendous damage to these animals. I won't show, I'll save you,
Yeah.
save your viewers uh, the horrible sight of finding these animals that are so severely infected that they
I
have to
would
be
say do
euthanized.
not Google. Do not
Right,
Google this.
right, because
I looked and it's awful. It's
they'll tell you
really
how
awful.
terrible this parasite is. The other thing is it's fairly easy to prevent, and I want to make sure that you're going to have viewers and listeners to this from probably all over the United States. It's not just going to be isolated to where I live up in the Chicago area.
Right.
So it's unlikely at this point that we would even have to worry about this up
Well,
here.
let's talk about that for a second because I do want to address where where this is the biggest concern. So here in Chicago,
No,
we're plenty far, 1,000 miles or more from
right
Texas.
now, just to make sure, it's along the Texas border and southwest Texas border, and one case so far in New Mexico. Now, there'll be more. I know that there'll be a lot more.
Okay.
Um,
And
and that's
it's also south of the US and Mexico and
Yeah,
Central
well,
America.
yeah, and let's briefly just say to you that to tell your viewers that the countries that this is in and has been in, all of Central America is a country that has a problem with screwworm. Mexico has a problem with screwworm. South America has a problem with screwworm. And only the United States has successfully eradicated it in the past. And we're starting to do the same thing again. If you are going to travel with your dog into into an area in the South, for instance, Central America or Mexico or South America, the best thing to do is to contact the local Department of Agriculture for that country. Or you can contact the United States Department of Agriculture. Because right now, as of yesterday, in order to go to those countries with your pet, you're going to need to have a certificate of showing that your pet is free of New World Screwworm. And the only way you're going to be able to get that is to go to a veterinarian to get that certificate. And I believe that that certificate has to be also approved by the head of the Department of Agriculture for each state. So it has to be signed off. So if you're going to go tomorrow with your pet, you're not going to be able to enter those countries with your pet. You have to give it time to be able to get the certificate. Then the Department of Agriculture of each state has to be able to sign off on that. Now it's the same thing for animals coming into the United States. Any dogs or cats that are come in from rescue groups or from wherever, from shelters down there, they have to have a certificate that shows that they're free of screwworm. Clearly, you also have to understand a screwworm is not infectious between animal to animal or to animal to person. So if your dog or cat or even a bird has a screwworm infection, you're not going to be able to get it by touching your animal. It's only is infective through the fly, just like heartworm is only infected by the infected mosquito, is only transmitted by an infected mosquito to a bite to a dog or cat or ferret. But this is only in these animals only get infected by the adult male, female fly laying eggs on a wound on that animal. And so that's pretty much the story. Now, in dogs and cats, if you're worried and you live in the South, there are some very effective products that you can apply to prevent the larvae from, if your if your animal does get has eggs on it or and gets infested with the larvae. And these, for instance, like NexGard Plus, NexGard Plus Chewable, NexGard Plus Chewable, which is a Boehringer Ingelheim product that your veterinarian has. It's by prescription, and that also prevents when you give it to your animal once a month. It prevents fleas and it prevents ticks and it's a heartworm prevention, roundworm prevention, and hookworm. So you're covering all these parasites, and it now also will prevent and kill screwworm larvae that your dog may have picked up or cat. Now, in the cat situation, it's NexGard Combo Chewable, and your veterinarian can supply the prescription for that or give it to you as well. And the cat will also be protected. In this particular case, for the cats, that's will protect them against heartworm and fleas and ticks as well. And it's these are great products, and they're part of a group of drugs that are called isoxazolines. And you're going to hear a lot more about that because these isoxazolines are very effective against parasite. And we're hoping that they're going to be able to solve some of the problems of what we call parasite resistance. In other words, where parasites have built up a self resistance to the drugs that we've been using for years. So
Oh,
there are lots of treatments that are available. The goal is to prevent this particular parasite from moving into further up into the United States. So, like I say, there's only 44 cases right now that we know of. Again, I am convinced that that's not all we're going to find. If you're going to be in the South, you're going to go to the border of Texas, you're going to visit friends and people down there, and you're going to take your pet. I would suggest that you have your veterinarian prescribe for you the NexGard that I just talked about, NexGard Plus that I talked to you about, or the Credelio Quattro, which are two products so far that we have, and there'll be more that will be approved. They're on a conditional. We call this the FDA has given them a conditional approval. That means that they've been proven by the pharmaceutical companies to be effective against killing the screwworm. So they can add that to their label, but and they put an asterisk next to it, and it's a conditional approval until there's enough data to make it a significant approval. But it will be on the label. And again, it also protects your pets against the other serious issues that we have, and which, by the
Right.
way, are increasing. This year so far has been a major tick year. It's a major problem in ticks, pretty much all over the country. And ticks carry disease. They don't only
Right.
carry them for our pets, but they carry them to us, like Lyme disease is an example. So there's
Right.
a lot of things. And so much, a lot of great work has been done. And I think this problem will be stopped, especially with the release of these millions of sterile flies.
So I just want to make sure that everyone's clear that the screwworm right now is in Texas, a little bit in New Mexico and areas south of there, Mexico and Central America and South America. If they're traveling to those areas or they live in those areas, they should be in touch with their veterinarian to talk about what type of monthly preventative would be best to protect their cats and dogs from the screwworm as well as other parasites.
That's correct. The female lays 200 to 300 eggs a day, and they can lay up to 3,000 eggs. And just so you know, the female fly only lives for 1 to 3 weeks. And so that's the end of it. But they can fly 6 to 7 miles to find a host. In other words, they'll find an animal that they can lay their eggs on. They're just not going to lay them any place. They're going to lay them on a wound on an animal. That's how
Okay.
this survives. Then the larvae feed, and within a week, the larvae come out of the wound. They grow, fall on the ground. They burrow into the ground, and that larvae then pupates. We call that the pupate area where it changes into a adult fly. And that all takes place within a week. And so
Oh,
everything is very quick. I mean, this is not something that takes 9 months to deliver.
right.
I mean, this is really very, very quick. And that's part of the problem. So they are radiating the males
Okay.
flies, which therefore make them sterile. And once they mate with the female then will lay her eggs, but they won't. There's nothing that will happen with these eggs. They won't hatch. Nothing
Right.
goes on. So it's a great system, and they release millions of flies. They don't just release a few, and they
Right.
go, and that's how this thing gets under control. This is what the larvae looks like. Now this is all blown up. Obviously, you don't want a larvae like that, you
Right.
know, in your backyard. But that's what the larvae looks like, and if you can see the ridges that go around it, that's why it's called a screwworm, because as it feeds, it actually spirals down
Burrows.
into the wound. So
Right.
that's why it's called a screwworm. So that's the story.
So let's briefly talk about you had raised the issue of ticks and other parasites. This time of the year, it's summer here in the Western Hemisphere, and there's all kinds of things out there. There's ticks, there's mosquitoes, there's everything you can imagine. So, um, tick disease, we're in the Chicago area, and shockingly, if you look at the CDC map of Lyme disease,
It's
Chicago, Wisconsin, Minnesota,
it's
heavily,
spreading. It's spreading.
it's
It's spread.
spreading.
Lyme disease is spreading, and it's
Yep.
spreading very rapidly. And I don't mean just in people, because it is spreading in people as well. But I mean in dogs. So let's say that you're hiking. As you hike, any long grass or wild grass or weeds that are along the hiking trails that you rub against, there could be ticks on there waiting just to get on you for a meal. That's the life cycle of the tick. And a lot of these ticks carry disease, like you said, and not only Lyme disease. There are Rocky Mountain spotted fever, anaplasmosis. There's many, many species of ticks all over the world, and they
And
can cause some serious issues.
yep. And the Lyme disease tick, I know that it's not just when you're out in the field or you're in the Northwoods in Wisconsin, but I know many of our veterinarians tell us that they're taking more and more ticks off of dogs here in the city, in the Chicago area, dogs that have been down at the lakefront or at the local dog park. So it's not just a issue for if you are out in fields walking your dog or working out in the fields or in the North Woods. It's everywhere,
Right,
really.
right. Because, we have a very mobile society now. And just so you know, that birds oftentimes will bring ticks into an area. So when
Oh,
we have migrating birds, birds that have gone into the south, to migrate for the winter from the north area here, and they fly back up, they oftentimes can carry ticks on them that can infect dogs and cats and people. And the life cycle is such that the each cycle of the tick development requires a blood meal. So you have your larvae that go through a development and they get on the animal and take a blood meal, and then they fall off and develop into the next stage. And this goes on and on. And that's why we have a problem. The other issue we have is with all the floods and the rains in the south that we've had, we're having a huge influx numbers of mosquitoes, and mosquitoes carry heartworm. The
right.
American Heartworm Society has estimated that there's over 1 million positive dogs and cats in the United States that have heartworm. Uh,
Wow.
so, and as I mentioned before, when I did our last podcast with you, heartworm is easy to prevent and very difficult to cure, and in some
Right.
cases can cause death.
And
And
not only,
so,
I do want to point out for our viewers, not only is it difficult to cure, it's extremely hard on the pet, especially dogs have to be confined for extended periods, and it's extremely costly. And
yes,
so, like with so many issues related to pet care and human care, quite frankly, prevention is easier and less expensive than treatment.
and that's exactly right. And we always say that it's so easy to prevent a disease and it's very difficult to treat, regardless of which disease you have. Now, Lyme disease, if it's called early, even in people, we use an antibiotic called doxycycline. Uh, but if it's not caught early, it causes permanent arthritic conditions in our bones, can cause kidney issues, chronic kidney disease, and can cause heart cardiac disease. So it's very important. And I think the bottom line here is we should be taking our pets to the veterinarian at least once a year. And if your pet is older, it should go twice a year. And when you go that once a year for your physical exam, your veterinarian, in most cases, will be running a simple test for heartworm disease and for tick diseases. So they'll know right away, early enough, whether your animal is infected with heartworm or is infected with one of the tick diseases. And then you can be on top of it right away.
Right.
Even if you're careful, sometimes your animal can get infected because it depends on where you go. You go to the dog park, your dog runs around with so many other dogs that are in the dog park. Are those dogs flea or tick free? We don't know that. You don't know that.
Right. Right.
And remember that heartworm is transmitted only by the bite of a mosquito. So if a heartworm infected dog comes into your neighborhood and the mosquitoes bite that dog and take a blood meal, that mosquito will be infective for another dog in the neighborhood. And
Right.
like coyotes are huge carriers of heartworm disease. And we have lots of coyotes now too. So
And the one thing I do want to stress for people is that something you taught me is that just one bite from an infected mosquito will give your dog heartworm. It's not a maybe, it's an absolute.
and it happens right away. Both the tick and the mosquito in their saliva have an anticoagulant so that they can successfully take a blood meal, suck blood, and it won't clot. That's the
Okay.
purpose behind it. The mosquito does the same thing. Of course, the ticks carry Lyme disease and other diseases, bacterial diseases, and that's how they're transmitted. It's by the bite. It's just not that the tick being on the dog causes the disease. It's got to go through the bite. So what I was the point I was making was that doesn't happen right away in a tick. Sometimes it takes hours, but sometimes it may take 24 to 48 hours. So you have time. Once you pull that tick off, if you catch it right away, that you probably will stop an infection from occurring. On the other hand, the mosquito, once the mosquito bites the animal, if it's an infected mosquito, that animal is going to have heartworm. It's not like maybe, because it happens right away. So that, and I may be exaggerating a little bit on time for that, but you get bit by a mosquito, if your dog or cat gets bit, there's no question. And the other thing I wanted to make a point is people aren't really showing up with their cats at the veterinarian like they should for many reasons. And for those of you who let your cats go outside, which I think is a wrong thing to do, but if you let your cat go outside, can you think of uh, any other pet animal that is more exposed to mosquito or ticks than your cat? Because they're always in just their regular routine behavior. They're always searching for a little rodent or something that they can either play with or can eat. And they're down in the bottom part of the grass in the garden, and that's where the mosquitoes and the ticks are. So your cat needs to be on prevention for heartworm, just like your dog does. And cats need to be checked for heartworm as well, because we cats are end hosts. So what that means is that the larvae, the microfilaria, which grow sometimes to 10 to 12 inches in these animals and grow to adult worms in the blood vessels of the lungs and the heart, uh, they stay there. They don't go on. And so in a cat, which may show signs of coughing, asthma, sometimes vomiting is a simple sign of a heartworm in a cat. The problem with it in a cat is that there's no treatment. And so if it's bad enough infection, they die. They just die from heart failure. In a dog, we can treat it. It's expensive, and there are different methods to treat. It's hard on the animal, as you mentioned, but in cats, we can't. So the bottom line here, please take your pet to your veterinarian at least once a year. Get them tested. Don't end up being one of these people that say, "Oh, it'll never happen to me," because it does. You have an animal, it goes outside, and even if your cat doesn't go outside, let's say, "Oh, my cat's always inside." Do you have mosquitoes in the house ever? Do you ever come in and bring mosquitoes on your clothes? Yes, you do. And it only takes, again, and especially now with our climate warming, so that the Earth's temperature is up a couple degrees now. Our winters offer lots of safe harbor for mosquitoes to winter over, whether it be in the crawl space of your house or in a city. We have sun heats up the buildings, and so down low, these mosquitoes can thrive. And areas where people used to say in Arizona, "Oh, we don't have this is desert. We don't have any mosquitoes here." Well, guess what? You irrigate all your golf courses. There's irrigation all over, and you have mosquitoes.
Right.
And coyotes are a perfect example of that in Arizona. There's a large number of coyotes. We tell people all the time, don't ever put your pet out in your backyard, without you being with it,
Right.
because coyotes, besides eating rabbits, they also love to eat small dogs and cats. But
And
it's
that's true not just in Arizona, but
even
anywhere. I
here.
mean, this
Yeah,
past winter I had two coyotes jump the fence into my yard.
yeah.
Yes, I
So
never let my dog
don't worry about as much about screwworm right now. At least it's not in the northern hemispheres. It's not an issue, but you should worry about the general health, because if you have a pet, you have a responsibility for that pet. And if you go and buy a Starbucks every month, you can afford to protect your pet
out.
for heartworm and parasites.
Right. And just to be clear, no matter what part of the country you live in, your veterinarian is the best source to know what protections your pet needs based on its age, health, lifestyle, and living conditions.
That's perfect. You're hired. You did a great job. Uh, and I always say your veterinarian is your pet's second best friend. So make sure you get there and they can, you don't, I don't expect you to walk away from this podcast and being knowledgeable in all of this, but your veterinarian is, and their staff is. And those are the people that can help you the best and get you the best prices for what you need to protect your pet with. And it's the least thing you can do for your furry family member.
Right.
So
Right. I see so often on Facebook people asking, my dog did this, or my dog's suffering from this, or whatever, what should I do? And I always get on and say, ask your veterinarian.
right,
They're
right.
the
So
experts and
it's
they know
like
your
it's like
animal's health
humans. It's
better
like
than
humans.
anyone.
Yeah, it's like humans. They go to Dr. Google,
Right.
and they diagnose their own problem.
Right.
So, but no, those are all really good points, and I hope we get that point across.
All right. Well, Dr. Rubin, thank you again for sharing your expertise with us. We are so grateful to you and the other veterinarians who've given their time here because, like you said, you could go to Google, and I call it Google guessing. But here we have reputable, knowledgeable, expert insight onto these issues. So thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
well, thank you. One thing, if you're interested in screwworm, and I hope you are after I've given this, if you go to screwworm.org, you can find everything that you want to know, including pictures that we didn't show here. But
Right.
screwworm.org, and it's one word, screwworm, and remember that there's two W's. It's not just one W. It's screwworm.org, and you'll see everything that I've talked about and more because there's a lot of information. And if you're a veterinarian and happens to be listening to this, they have the United States Department of Agriculture Animal Health Division has a great section for veterinarians as well, with every day up to date on what you need to know and what you need to tell your clients. So
Yep. Yep.
that's
And
where we are.
I saw that the USDA, and we'll put all these websites up here on the screen, but the USDA also has a page with the current status, latest numbers of where the screwworm is in the United States and
Right.
how many cases there are. So
And
people
they
can,
update that every day. So
yep,
you can put in today's date, and you'll find out how many screwworms cases have been. And they list it by the way as active and inactive. So an active case, is one that's right now has a parasite and they're treating it, but it's not clear. And an inactive means that they've treated it and it's cured. So that's how, but you look at the total number of cases because that's what we need to know.
yep, yep. Well, thank you again, Dr. Rubin. We appreciate your time.
Anytime.
And for our viewers, thank you for tuning in to Corey's Corner.com. And we hope you'll check back regularly for more information. If you want to learn more about heartworm disease, which is more common and in all parts of the country, Dr. Rubin joined us previously and really conducted a master class on heartworms. So I hope you'll tune into that. We'll put a link to that video as well. And check out for more information, Corey's Corner.com.